going to tell you where that's from and what it is, and then we're going to ask you to do us the favor of interpreting that proverb and telling us what it means to you.
Well,
we are in the Republic of the Sudan. Why the Republic of Sudan? Because we have been visiting the countries on the continent of Africa that we refer to as countries within the geopolitical space of what we call the coup belt. Countries that are characterized, sadly enough, by just the numerous coups they have had. Sudan got its independence in 1958. Since then, they've had 7 coups.
Yeah.
There was a big lull when Omar al-Bashir was president, so for 30 years, they didn't have coups. But thereafter, it's like they've gone back to factory settings.
Yeah.
Now, this unfortunately dims the prospects of the country and the very many wonderful things that this country has. This is a country that is rich in many things. 3rd largest producer of gold on the continent. Okay, 3rd largest country on the continent. It has chromite. It has iron ore. It has rare earth. It has wealth.
Absolutely.
But when you have a situation where, say, 1 million of its population are now in southern Sudan as refugees, then all these things that we say are wonderful about the country are lost. Anyway, the proverb. Better your Lear Bob than people's dates. Now, let me explain. Lear Bob is supposed to be the description of a certain herbal concoction and mixture that was used in Persia. Among the things that it was used for was for male infertility.
Every time. Every time.
Yes, it's a good one, isn't it? Yes, exactly. So let me now rephrase the proverb using something that is easy to understand. Better your herbal concoction than other people's dates. Date as in the fruit that people eat, like during this month of Ramadan. It's one of the things people eat to when they break their fast. Am I right, Alhaj?
You're right.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Please.
What is your take on this proverb? What do you think it means?
My assumption is dates are used during Ramadan, and also it's a delicacy, most likely for the Gulf region. They take dates possibly during celebrations, but also for their basic food as a necessity. So my take is that the concoction only comes in during difficult times, and difficult times are there. They are normal. Human beings have to go through difficult times, So better the concoction, because as you go through the difficult times, your expectation is there are better days ahead, and therefore you'll partake of the deaths going forward. Am I right?
Let me tell you, today the guests have gotten this proverb. I don't know what it is about the proverb, but they've understood it excellently.
Perfectly.
So have excellently. To the point where nothing will be explained or added. Thank you.
Thank you.
Asante.
Yes.
Asante.
Fantastic. P.S. Let me draw your attention to a report that was released on the 16th of March by the New York Times. We are not sure why they commissioned this report, but it came out either way. And the numbers that we were given is that 274 Kenyan workers, most of whom are women, died in Saudi Arabia over the past 5 years, despite being a young workforce in non-dangerous jobs. It went on to talk about Ugandans and Kenyans, but the Kenyan women travel to Saudi Arabia each year to take up domestic jobs, such as housekeepers and nannies, but many are returning with stories of unpaid wages, detention, beatings, starvation, and sexual assault. Others have returned in coffins. Among those who died, autopsies have revealed evidence of trauma, such as burns and electric shocks. But Saudi authorities labeled the deaths as natural causes. Eunice Achieng, one example, a Kenyan housekeeper, called home in 2022 and said that her boss had threatened to kill her and throw her in a water tank. She was later found dead in a rooftop water tank in what Saudi police labeled a natural death. It's part of the report. We've had these conversations several times.
Yes.
274 over 5 years is a very large number.
True.
and the work employment situation in the country, which has been accepted, is an issue. We have seen the work of the government to try and secure jobs for many a Kenyan abroad. But comes into question, number one, the safety, number two, the security, and number three, the G2G agreements that are made when Kenyan workers are leaving here to look for greener pastures or just to look for a job. So let's look at the state of this particular situation, PS. The state of Kenya's labor market today. Where are we, taking into consideration this report, which I've shared parts of just now, and the reality of on the ground, where more and more people are still leaving Kenya's shores looking for work?
First of all, let me say that is a very sad story, and even the statistics that have been quoted, there's nothing exciting about that. And therefore, the need for us to counter what is happening with the best strategies that we can employ. Let me first start by saying, migration is as old as humankind. Ever since man found himself on the face of this earth, he has been migrating, looking for better, pastures, looking for a better kill as it is, better opportunities. He keeps on hunting, for better and better ways of improving his standard of living. So migration is normal as it is. Yeah, even those of us who are seated here, we migrated. We came from our rural, homes to come and look for a better pay, and make use of our skills the best way we can. So migration has been taking place for a pretty long period of time. You will be surprised that there are about 4 million Kenyans out there in the diaspora, trying to eke a living, to earn a living. So what am I trying to say? Government comes in to guarantee the interests of Kenyans, of its citizens. That is the reason why government comes in, so as to ensure it is done in a very structured and organized way. That is the object of government. So yes, there have been those very, very sad cases that have taken place. And therefore, as I said earlier on, the need for government to put in place strategies to counter that. And indeed, we have done a lot. Let me just enumerate what we have done for the last nearly 1.5 years. As it is now, we are negotiating for human rights, based bilateral labor agreements in accordance with the ILO model. We are actually using the ILO model to negotiate for these rights, so that Kenyans who access these job opportunities and good opportunities with that, and in accordance with the structures that we have put in place, will ensure they get maximum out of their labor in these countries.
Now, P.S., even as you still look at the reports that you're having here, 1,000 Kenyans are in jails abroad. This is in the precipice of Duta, who is in Vietnam. And Duta as well was leaving this country because she was going to look for better opportunities. And as we talk about the labor situation in the country right now, we look at doctors are about to down their tools. We look at every other sector, everyone, one way or the other, wants to down their tools because of how they're being treated, which goes to speak on the MOUs, the CBAs that are being agreed upon, which are not implemented per se, which goes to beg the question, therefore, why does it seem as though the government is not ensuring that its people, even in the country or without, get the best out of its government?
No, we are doing our very best. Possibly where previous administrations have failed to do is to negotiate the CBAs, early enough, rather than waiting until the 11th hour when things go haywire, and that's when they come in, and sometimes they're under duress. So they append their signatures, on documents that they know pretty well they will not be able to sustain going forward because of the finances that are required. I think the best way out is to have discussions, continuously. The tripartite arrangement that is there between government, employers, and employees. This has to take place continuously. Let me give you an example. The university lecturers were also on strike last year. We did append our signature on a return to work formula, but we did agree that there is need for us to start negotiating for the next CBA as it is now, rather than waiting until that particular period, when the CBA is supposed to be effected. That's when we start negotiating. We'll end up in trouble. So it's a question of looking at the performance of the economy. You see, many a times, officers will append their signatures on a document because they don't want to see people on the streets, not necessarily because they know going forward the government will be able to pay the PACs as required. So in essence, it's a question of sitting together. Yeah, we appraise them concerning this economic situation as it is and the projection going forward. Then on the basis of that, we can negotiate whether there's going to be an increment or not. So yes, administrations have failed in terms of discussing these issues at the 11th hour. It should not be so. Yeah.
And so then taking into consideration of volatile, I mean, it is volatile, and that's why we did see the president make certain agreements with different countries, Germany, Canada, the Gulf states, and to say that, have an environment where Kenyan workers can come there. The question is, beyond saying come, how far do these agreements go in ensuring the protection of Kenyan workers abroad?
Yeah, that's a very critical question. And therefore, the strategies that we have in place to ensure that the BLA, the bilateral labor agreement, is implemented as it is. What we are doing currently is to deploy labor attaches. We want to deploy government officers who will first of all ensure that they receive Kenyans when they migrate to these countries of destination, get to know where they will be working in terms of the location, the geographical location, the employer, the terms and conditions. And not only that, give them also their contacts so that in case they're in trouble, this officer can respond to that situation immediately, in real time. Yeah. So what we are trying to do is, particularly countries where Kenyans are migrating in large numbers, we will deploy more labor attaches. We have a labor attache in Riyadh, as it is currently in Saudi Arabia. We want to deploy another one in Jeddah. You've made reference to the bilateral labor agreement that was signed between the president and the chancellor of Germany sometime last year, actually in September last year. We are deploying a labor attache to Germany as it is. From July, there's a labor attache who will be deployed there, so as to look into the welfare of Kenyans, get to know where they are, as I said, the exact location, so that in case anybody gets into trouble, gets into a wanting situation, then the government officer can come in to assist.
Yes, one would ask, the labor attaches that you deploy, say, to these countries, how significant are they and what can they do in these countries?
They play a very major role. Let me give an example of Saudi Arabia. Yeah, if you are to look at the statistics in terms of, the complaints that were being raised by Kenyans before, in comparison to the way the situation is now, you can see there's a reduction in the number of complaints. And that's the reason why we have found it fit to deploy these labor attaches. And by the way, looking at other countries also that have succeeded, Philippines, for example, has deployed a number of labor attaches all over the world. There are as many, possibly, as the ambassadors that they have. So this is the way to go. Get somebody who understands labor laws very well, who understands the ILO conventions very well, so that in case there is a challenge, then you can be able to intervene. But not only that, we want to study the legal frameworks of these countries, because we strongly believe the constitutions of these countries can still be of assistance to our young people out there, So it's a question of studying the legal framework, get to know how you can capitalize on it also to safeguard the interests of your people.
Yeah. You spoke of Germany. When we send a labor attache to Germany, are we piloting? Are we trying to figure out how this thing works in a country where we actually haven't had very many complaints? And one, two, they have a policy on migrant workers, but they look for skilled workers.
Yes, absolutely.
So the people who actually end up there feel something like a 400,000 job gap per year that Germany has. And because they have very clear policies on how this works, it's categorized. And so you actually have an idea. Are we trying to see how it is a labor attaché would function in such a setup? Because the bulk of the complaints that we have come from the Middle East. And I would have assumed that that is where we would need a labor attaché. Probably more than one, because the area and the numbers of people there are more.
You'll be surprised, Kotamuga. We have a labor attaché in Qatar.
We do.
We do. The one who is there currently, her term is coming to an end. There is another one that we are deploying from May to take over. We have a labor attaché in the United Arab Emirates that we have deployed there, to work and look into our interest. We're intending to deploy a labor attaché also in Kuwait, and the rest of the other countries, even Oman, because Oman, we have a relationship, with that country. Omani Arabs came to Mombasa a long time ago, and therefore Kenyans don't suffer much when they go to that country. They're able to understand their culture and their way of life. But we're going to deploy one. So yes, our focus is in areas where Kenyans are migrating in large numbers. Germany is a country that going forward, owing to the fact that we've signed a bilateral labor agreement with them, we can foresee many Kenyans will capitalize on the opportunities opening, up in that country. And therefore the need for us to send a labor attaché. That labor attaché will be in charge of Germany and also Austria, because we've signed a memorandum of understanding also with Austria. So that labor attaché will be in charge of that area. But you're absolutely right in that the constitution in some of these Western European countries, take care of the welfare of migrant workers in a very comprehensive way. But nevertheless, you cannot assume that you'll not have a challenge or two. And therefore, the need for you to be careful and, be proactive and deploy an officer who will take care of any needs that are likely to arise. Because remember, this is a country where we are testing, we're putting our foot in there and testing the waters to see whether it's going to work positively or not.
When we look at the agreements that are made, and you talk about then going in and seeing what is constitutionally available, those countries where Kenya does have these BLAs with, this is an ongoing process. Do you see that as something that can be done before Kenyans actually find their way to those countries, or is it something that continues?
No, it cannot be done before, because, as I explained earlier on, you cannot stop human beings. I'm not making reference to Kenyans per se, but human beings from migrating
They'll
to
move
look
anyway.
for greener pastures. Yes, you can't stop them. And that's the reason why I said earlier on, there are about 4 million Kenyans out there. Government comes in to safeguard their interests, but you cannot stop people from going to countries where they think they can be able to improve on their standard of living. Yes, we may need to be strategic in terms of countries that we foresee Kenyans are likely to migrate to, And mind you, what we are pushing for is not labor migration per se, but labor mobility, So what we are saying is it's circular migration. They go there for a short period of time, possibly 3 years, 4 years. We want them to come back home with a kill. They've gone hunting. We want them to bring back the resources that they will be able to save to make our economy expand. So yes, there are other countries that we can foresee possibly Kenyans will be moving to. Southeast Asian countries have become problematic as it is currently, but we can foresee Kenyans will get more opportunities there in terms of teaching English, in terms of, IT, working in IT industries, and therefore we want to be strategic and ensure that we're able to deploy also labor attachés in those countries going forward. Of course, the biggest challenge we have is with government currently is the limited resources, that we have. But nevertheless, as we go forward, as we sensitize also, Parliament, the National Assembly on the need for them to vote for more money in this program, will eventually succeed.
P.S. One would argue that if we can't stop anyone from migrating, because that is just the nature of doing things. And even as we continue looking for labor outside, one would ask, why don't we look inwards? in terms of providing these opportunities here. Because why do I say that? There is an argument, and you would argue it's valid, the sense that these young, strong, energetic Kenyans are being sent out there to grow those economies. You'd argue in the sense that the remittances that they send home and how important it is to our GDP. But how about that energy is being spent back home to build our economy, which then goes back to the government in providing these opportunities for these Kenyans to build the country here?
No, you are absolutely right, but there is a flip side to that story. The reality of the situation is the unemployment rate is high now. We're not talking about tomorrow. The situation that is obtaining currently is extremely wanting. How do you tell these young people, who are energetic, who are skilled, how do you tell them to wait until the economy expands before we engage them? Human beings are social beings. They need to develop themselves. They need to get married. They need to establish their families. So you can't tell them, look, the ideal situation is for us to employ you within the economy. So stay put, wait for the next 5 years. We have policies that we've put in place to enable the economy expand, and then we are going to engage you. That cannot happen.
On the flip side, one would ask then, what is the future with regard to the same question in terms of solving the problem?
Yes. So, in essence, this is how we are going to solve the problem of the expansion of our economy. Yeah.
And solving unemployment.
And solving the unemployment problem. Of course, one, we have to put in place, good macro policies to ensure the economy expands. But we're looking at models that obtain also in other countries. And I did mention this also the last time that I was here. South Korea, for example, that sent their young people to Japan. They were able to get technology as it was then and came back with the same know-how to their country. That's the reason why we have the Hyundais that compete with the Toyota models that we have in the international car market. We have the smartphones, the electronic equipment that we have. South Korea is now competing at the same level with Japan. And it's basically because they were strategic enough to send their young people to Japan to get know-how and bring it back home. So this is what we are saying. Last year, looking at the statistics, the data that we have from the central bank, Kenyans were able to remit back home $4.95 billion, money that was injected into our economy, which has expanded our economy substantially. Compare that with the traditional cash crop earners, agriculture, tourism. Agriculture is at $1.5 billion as it is now. Remittances at $4.95 billion. Where should our focus be then?
I see a marked difference, PS, between the example that you gave and what happens in Kenya today. The example that you gave of young South Koreans going to Japan to build skill and then bring it back to essentially put something into the economy that grows the economy and that you can see it today. I see a marked difference between that and what we're talking about, where Kenyans go out and bring in, in terms of affecting the economy, it's huge. It's billions in terms of dollars that comes in every year. However, do we see a transference of skills? Are these people coming back here to be able to build an economy? We know, for example, there is no way that the economy will grow if you're not making profits. And those profits come from manufacturing, they come from industry. You sell, you make a surplus, and that is what grows your economy. We know this. So I don't see the connection between an example given in South Korea, Japan, and here. And shouldn't we be here at that point? Shouldn't we be there at this point, whereby you're saying industry is growing, manufacturing is through the roof, industry is expanding, beyond money coming in and people building their homes? What else is being done?
Let me break it down to you. I want to give a very, very appropriate example, and I'll give another one with reference to your question. Yeah, but let me give an example of a housemaid in Saudi Arabia who is bringing back remittances, who has bought a plot somewhere, who has been able to construct rental houses, in the process has employed a mason, has employed an electrician, in the process has been able to assist those who are mining, say, sand, you know, and stones. So in essence, you may not see it in a very, very big way, but in actual sense, she's making a huge contribution to the economy. Absolutely. She has employed other people who are idle, who are not engaged, but they have found a source of living as it is. But let me look at it now from a bigger perspective. We are sending young people to Germany. Isn't it a fact that in terms of the technology that obtains in Germany currently, it's at another level in comparison to what we have in Kenya?
But who is it assisting? It's assisting the German economy.
Yes, but I'm talking of the know-how. I'm talking of the know-how. Yes, within the short period of time, it will assist the Germans. There's no question about it. But the know-how that they will get, because we are sending IT experts, we are sending electricians, you know, we are sending professionals as it is. They will be able then to come back.
But are they coming back? P.S. I think
yes,
that's the question.
As I said earlier on.
Are the Kenyans who are leaving Kenya going to other countries to build their expertise and boost other economies? Do we actually see that they are coming back to contribute to the Kenyan economy? And if they are, please give us examples of how they are coming back and where they're doing
The answer is yes. You see, I said earlier on that the object we have is to encourage circular migration. We're not encouraging Kenyans to go and migrate there permanently and to settle there permanently. It's labor mobility. Go work for 3 years, 4 years, come back home. So what we are trying to do, we have sat with Kenya Investment Authority. We want to ensure that the returns on investments for Kenyans as they come back with their savings is as high as it can be, so that we come up with a product, you know, that is geared towards encouraging Kenyans also to remit back their savings. So what can you do? You can give tax holidays, just as an example, you know, for that person who is putting up an industry. Rather than waiting for, you know, other investors from other countries to come and invest, make use of your own Kenyans to come back home and do so. So yes, the return on investments will be high. The diaspora bonds, you know, that was launched the other day is to guarantee this Kenyan the highest return on their savings, you know, so as to ensure that they find it more attractive to bring back their savings home rather than to retain them in their country. And mind you, savings that are remitted back home, in accordance with the statistics that we have, about 3-4 years ago, was at 5%. We want to grow it to even 10%. We want to grow it even to 20%, you know, so that this Kenyan is guaranteed the money that he has saved will sustain him even for a long period of time to come.
Let's take a break and come back and see how it really does impact on the Kenyan economy and how the labor question is being approached. The PS in the State Department for Labor and Skills Development, Shadrach Mwadime, is here with us this morning, and we're looking at Kenya's labor problem and ways towards fixing it. It's 25 minutes to 10. We continue right after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to
Chilled Spice. Experience timeless elegance at Muthu Sovereign Suits and Spa, where luxury meets every moment. Whether it's a wedding, honeymoon, or a special celebration, we've created the perfect setting. Relax in our spacious suites, unwind at the spa, or enjoy a refreshing swim. From delightful breakfasts to elegant high tea, we cater to every occasion. Book your experience today at Muthu Sovereign Suits and Spa.
In a city of passing lights, some people are just meant to be. It's how we fall in love and keep on chasing on the edge of destiny.
na dakika mamili every 20 minutes. Multiply bet yako times 5,000 kila draw. Ukicheza na 20 bob only una daka laki yako. 40 bob wins you 200,000. Ukicheza na 100 unashinda nusu milioni. Millions to be won every day. Cheza daka, hesabika na washindi. Ni rahisi. Nenda kwenye paybill 440 account KTN, amount shilingi 20 hadi shilingi 2,000 and get your cash with direct to your M-Pesa. Cheza daka.
This week on Club Kiboko. I'm told you have to hold on these tightly and you don't let them go.
This is what I'm talking about right here on Straight Up Show.
Papa Francis, Papa Colimo, na Papa Male, ni bro.
I am not a woman.
Nini tena nyabuto, ni nini?
In marriage, having somebody who understands you in all season is very important.
I'd rather have bad times with you than good times with someone else.
Subscribe to the Smarter Bundle today. Dial *544# or visit my Airtel app. Airtel Smarter Bundle. Browse, chat, call. Airtel Money. Airtel, a reason to imagine.
Home, to implement that which he has been able to get there in terms of the know-how back home. You need to have a discussion with the Kenya Diaspora Association. There are many Kenyans who are coming back home with the savings that they have made, and they are changing lives here. They are employing Kenyans, they are paying them in accordance with the minimum wage. They are not being exploited because these are their fellow Kenyans, their younger brothers and sisters. If you look at the trajectory, things are looking good.
Now, P.S., let's talk about the transfer of knowledge that you're discussing here. And you've actually quoted South Korea. South Korea started as a textile industry, nguo all over the world, and then got into wigs before they got into vehicles that you've actually quoted, which is Hyundai. And when you talk about Hyundai, they used the Mitsubishi engine back in the 70s. But what did they do? They brought in experts from Japan, from the US, to help them improve the Hyundai to become the Genesis that is there today. As you talk about our skilled labor going out there, you see, as they come back, what is the government doing in making sure that the skills that are out there, those that are working in all these big firms that are out there, that we have that skill to build our companies back home so that the economy grows? Because you see, the government was intention on who it needed to bring on board for their vehicle industry to grow. Are we seeing that movement in the government today?
Yes, we are. Ideally, as you said earlier on, Kenyans would wish to work within their country, rather than migrate abroad. There are some who will have to migrate. So what we are doing with reference to that, now that we have arrangements with some of these Western European countries, we're also attracting them to come and invest in our country. I want to give an example of a gentleman in Kwale, whom I will not mention his name, but he's German, and he has come with the technology of making shoes, quality shoes that are being sold in the international market, That's part of it. But he's insisting also in terms of the know-how that is required. If it is possible, we change our curriculum in our TVETs. If it is possible, we send our young people also to Germany to learn, of what is expected of them, so that when they come back to his industry in Kwale, they'll be able to produce quality shoes as he expects. We are looking forward to big companies, Bosch and what have you, which we are trying to attract, also to come to Kenya and invest in our economy in terms of establishing industries. So we give them a good, attractive package and allow our young people then to be able to get that know-how also within.
But appears in the 1990s, through Kenya Industrial Estates and some participation of ICDC, we were making shoes locally. ICDC funded an entity called Tiger Shoes. Kenya Industrial Estates, I know, funded in Mombasa entities that were making shoes. Now, I start and stop with shoes, but people talk of uchumi, and they do not know that the Chumi supermarkets that led the way to all the big names that we have was part of ICDC. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this, that if we look for external investments into the country, and yet we have not had, we actually have a framework that can support locals to do the very same thing. What is being done to revive? Because these things tend to be on their deathbed. They've been bastardized and messed up with all over for the longest time. You have Agricultural Development Corporation, you have Agricultural Finance Company. We had entities that sought to ensure that the sectors that are important for us in this country had a growth process and had a framework within which they could work. We have Africa Tours and Hotels. Most people don't even know that was also part of ICDC. Yeah. I'm mentioning this because we are not really that far away from doing what other people are doing in the West or in Southeastern Asia. As PS Labour, what steps are we taking to ensure that that structure that we once had that was supposed to propel us to where these people are, and arguably some came and saw those structures, adopted them, and it actually worked. What are we doing? Because if we are tuning our curriculum to meet these needs, if we are ensuring that we have a labor workforce that can actually be exported and we can see it, it means they meet the master to be taken abroad to work in those places. What are we doing to ensure that these very same people can be encouraged locally? Or when somebody leaves after 3 years, whatever it is they're doing abroad, when they come here, there is a framework and a structure that can help them do the very things that they saw happening there.
Absolutely. First of all, I must accept that we went wrong somewhere. There's no question about it. That's the reason why all these parastatals went down the drain. You know, ideally, these are the companies that should be solving our problem of unemployment. But somehow we lost it somewhere. Although there's a saving grace, you know, in terms of the education sector, because we've done extremely well. We have more than 56 universities as it is now, and we have many TVETs that are coming up. So in terms of education, we did extremely well. However, we went wrong in that we're educating these young people, and after they attain the skills that they have, we are unable to employ them. So I totally agree with you concerning the need for us to relook at, you know, some of these strategies that we had before, which have been adopted by other countries, as you well put it, and they have succeeded, you know. So looking back, we went wrong somewhere. But I must appreciate the Kibaki administration, because he tried as much as he could to ensure that we go back to where we were supposed to have been, you know, even about 10 or 15 years before. He did a lot, even in terms of the policy papers that he came up with, and some of the policy papers that we're making use of. So the solution is, first of all, infrastructural development, because you have to have infrastructure in place. There is no way these companies will invest not knowing that they can access the market very easily. Infrastructure is being developed, and as you well know, there's been a lot of effort towards that direction by even the previous administrations, even the Uhuru administration, even the current administration as it is. Ministry of Trade is doing the best that they can to, you know, create a conducive environment to ensure that these companies are able to thrive as it is now. And you need to have a conversation with the PS Trade. You need to invite him and the PS Investment to come and appraise you, you know, concerning the structures that they have put in place as it is currently to encourage as many investments as possible, not only foreign investments, but also local investments within. So I must say there's a lot that is happening. But, you have to appreciate the fact that macro policies take a long period of time for them to have effect. That goes without saying.
I think this is one of the pain points, or this is one of the questions that arises. With the knowledge that macro policies take time to implement and for the results to be realized, then the hope is that we don't see a break in transmission over and over again with that realization in place that these policies take time.
True.
So are we now saying that with every new administration that those macro policies now are being put in place to see the realization after 10 years?
No.
It makes it look like a cyclical start and stop,
start
and stop. And so what happens when you start and stop for something that needs 20, 25 years?
Yeah.
If you can imagine that a macro policy had been put in place, implemented over time, was cross-cutting when it came to administrations, we would not be in the same place in which we are today.
Absolutely.
So then how do you guarantee that any macro policy that is set up by government today will actually see through the next 20 years? Because these are mid to long-term things. How do you ensure that they're seen through and actually bear the result that they ought to? How do you convince
Vision
Kenyans?
2030 is still being implemented.
We've got 5 years.
Yes, we've got 5 years to go. And we can see the effect, in accordance with the statistics also that we've been getting from the World Bank, that we are now at the lower middle income level. That shows that there is progress. But let me give you a guarantee, going forward, that things are going to work well. We have the Constitution of Kenya 2010. That was an excellent document, that Kenyans came up with. That guarantees implementation, of programs for a long period of time, because we're giving independence also to technical experts. Administrations will come and go. They will come with their policies and go. But remember, we have technical experts, government technical experts, who still remain in charge of the economy. Yeah. Unlike before, what normally happens with the political governments, one is in a high position today and thrown out tomorrow. It's not possible with reference to the Constitution, because it gives guarantees.
Possible? Why is it not possible? Let's give you an example, PS. And I like to give the example. I'm not going to do the Singapore thing that everybody talks about. I'm going to talk about China. China was, or is currently still in a block of 12 sections of 5-year plans. You wouldn't believe it, but according to their government, they're still in the development stage of their economy, whereby they've built entire cities where individuals today don't live, with a billion strong population, right? They have built cities where people don't live. They've tarmac roads. They've built the education sector, so much so now that they're exporting around the world. What did they do? They went insular. They buckled down and they said, over the next 60 years, this is what we're going to do. The 60 years has not lapsed. But has it been the same president, for example, that has been in China? Has it been the same administration over 60 years? No. Administrations have changed. But the policy and its implementation is being stuck to.
Absolutely.
So my question is, why does it seem so difficult for us? And it's not just Kenya, by the way. Yesterday we were talking about there's something wrong with us. Why is it that we cannot stick to this implementation and move from administration to administration? Why?
An important question that you're raising, which is a discussion we should have as Kenyans, so that we find a way forward. But you've used an appropriate example, China. Even with reference to why I'm here as it is this morning. China closed its economy. We know that about 40 years ago.
Yes.
And sent their young people abroad. They went to Ivy League universities. The Yale, Harvard, Canada.
But what did they do, PS? They came back and actually built.
And they came back with know-how. It is the know-how they came back home with,
exactly.
which
So they
has
didn't send the money
them
back.
Expand the economy.
Exactly.
But they had a framework which welcomed them back.
Yes.
They could plug in.
Absolutely.
For them to plug
Totally
in.
agree.
Do we have such a framework?
I said just a few minutes ago, we are working very closely with the Kenya Investment Authority to guarantee a high return on the investments that Kenya will come back home with. So we are looking, we're looking at things not only from a short-term perspective, but also from a long-term perspective. How do we guarantee Kenyans that when they come back with their money, it will not be wasted as it has been happening before.
But you see, PS, what you've just said, when they come back with their money, if you give the example of China, they came back with their expertise
the knowledge.
to plug into a framework which the government had insisted was in place for them to build the economy.
So when they came in, they added value to what already existed, and we see the results now.
Yes, very true. But it was not only the know-how, they also came back with the savings. I've just quoted figures here in terms of the projection that we see even going forward. What was there before? 3 years ago, the amount of money that was being remitted by Kenyans was about $3 billion. It is currently $4.95 billion. You're telling me we should ignore the fact that Kenyans are bringing back their savings?
Yes. It is significant.
Absolutely.
The efforts that are being made, we are not saying they are not valuable. They are significant and they are valuable.
Very true.
What we are saying is this. We are a country that already had a blueprint from doing the very same thing that we keep talking about that others are doing.
True.
By the time you're exporting labor, it means you have that labor.
Yes.
I'm repeating the same question I've asked. The framework, the policy, may be an act that should be enacted to ensure that within our own borders, we have the wherewithal to ensure that we do these things, so that when people come abroad, they plug in. Look,
yes,
at independence, we had just about the most nationalistic and patriotic civil service one could ever talk of. But many of these people had been trained abroad. Some were locally trained, some went the bulk went to Makerere, which followed an education system of the UK. But they were trained.
Yeah.
And they had a certain ethos. In the absence of that, the foundations that we talk about would never actually have been enacted. Now, we've carried on that tradition and people have gone out to study and many have come back. We know this and we see it.
Thank you.
In the research sector, the partnerships that our institutions have, I'll give an example of Cambry. People go abroad, they come back. We see it. And you know why? We see it because what that institution is able to do, even when you had a pandemic like COVID, we had trained personnel who were able to contribute the effort that was being made to fight the disease. You see?